So, I came up with a sermon title, Exploring Our Interconnectivity Along the Interdependent Web, because boy do I like big words, and there were a lot of them in that sentence. I think I probably talked on this before, and this ties into what I sermonated about 2 weeks ago, but I want to kind of further delve into the way that we are connected and interdependent. So, I'm going to start with the introduction to Judith A. Walker-Riggs' Cosmic Theology essay that is in this lovely book that someone mysteriously slipped into my cubicle in the back. What Unitarian Universalists Believe, Living Principles for Living Faith, Resources for Study and Worship. It's good. Okay. On a hot August day, I was in what Earthlings call the city Chicago, or more precisely, in the midst of those mock Gothic buildings we call the University area of Hyde Park, or more precisely still, in the large enclosed space of the Meadville Lombard Theological School, sitting in a gray folding chair that some native beings of this planet have made for their comfort, or so they say. The professor had asked us for suggestions as to what were the major theological issues of our day. I ventured to suggest that modern astrophysics and quantum mechanics, their discoveries of the ever-growing size of the universe, their visions of the enormity of space and time, and the complexity of the invisible micro-world of which all is created, and our role in all of this is just one small part of a mind-boggling enormity, was forcing people very uneasily to re-examine their theologies. He said, and I quote, "No, it's not." He went on, "We may know about a bigger universe with our minds, but we haven't internalized it at all." I said, "I know. I think I have. I really am aware all the time of a much larger universe than I was taught about as a child." He said, "No, you're not. When you get up in the morning, you still think of the sun as the center of the universe, unless you really concentrate." "But I think I really do have a different view." There were several nods from others. "We do too." And he turned on all of us and said, "You do not!" I like this introduction. We in the modern society have heard of a new term. It seems like a new term to me. It started in the last 20 years. Mansplaining. Okay? This idea that you don't know your mind as well as I can tell you about your mind. Mansplaining is generally in relationship to cisgender men telling cisgender women, what to think or feel or how to explain their feelings or their actions. But I think it also works in a hierarchy level. I've had many bosses explain to me why I don't know what I'm talking about, even though I was talking about what they were. It can be awkward and frustrating when realities clash and you're told that you don't know what you know. It's kind of a form of gaslighting, almost. I had a conversation with my wife and son just the other day about what gaslighting is. Can anybody come up with a quick, succinct gaslighting definition? Go!
You don't really want.
Right. And that's it. It's denying someone else's understanding of reality in an effort to make them feel crazy because you are a liar. Now, how does that all fall together as our interdependent interconnectedness? I also read an essay by Emerson this week, Ralph Waldo Emerson. The essay is on self-reliance. And Emerson's essay on self-reliance seems to almost contradict what we're about to talk about of the interconnected and interdependence. But it actually supported it rather well. Because what Emerson had to say was we fall into traps. We fall into traps of thinking. And if we are a self-reliant person, we can work our way out of those traps of thinking and be whole people. Okay? Some of those traps of thinking are traps that are created by religion or traps that are created by politics. He basically said, and I'm going to quote him here, sorry. Man, my notes are harder to read than I thought. Oh well, anyway. He says that it's important to remember that a person who is alone in the woods can be true to themselves very easily. It's not hard. You're alone, okay? You're self-reliant because of that loneliness. Or in a group or a mob of people, it's easy to depend on them for knowledge. It's easy to give sway over to everyone else's thought. The difficult thing is to be self-reliant in the mob, to still be true to yourself and your ideas while participating in community. Okay? And he says that part of the way that we do that is remembering to participate in the now, not the memory of what the community used to be, but not the hope for what the community is going to be. His whole conversation about the rose under his window, that's the reason I didn't do the call and response, because sometimes I think we lose some of the dynamic respect there. The rose under the window doesn't care about what the rose used to be. The rose isn't sitting there thinking to itself, I was so slim as a bud. I could really shed a couple of petal weights. It's all water-built, right? And the rose doesn't think to itself, one day I'm going to be a seed. Oh, but I can't wait to become a seed. Come, bees, pollinate me now. That is not the way the rose works. The rose is perfect in nature and doing exactly what nature intends in that perfection in the moment. We too can be that perfection in the moment. But the key is to know yourself well enough to participate fully in the community. There is no self-reliance, says Emerson, in following a dead religion, a dead Bible, a dead political system, a dead theology, a dead philosophy, a dead society. You're not benefiting yourself or anyone else around you by just being a yes man or a yes woman. It doesn't help, right? What helps is evaluating those systems, deciding what works for you, deciding what is appropriate for you, and then carrying that into the world. Now, Emerson also says the objection to conforming to usages that have become dead to you is that it scatters your force. Oh my gosh, he's a very wordy guy, and I'm not a wordy guy. But the idea is that when you dedicate your time, your energy, your mental thought process to dead forms, then you're distributing the energy that you have as a being poorly. Right? It's like that guy who insists that having the one electrical socket in his house that's got like 20 electrical cords and 3 power strips is fine. It's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. You're going to overrun that socket and you're wasting all that stuff. You could spread that around. So if that one socket theoretically is you and the energy you're putting out, and the rest of the sockets in the house get to be the community you participate in, right? If you spread some of that energy around, you're going to get a better function out of all of your appliances in your home. I know, this is the goal, right? The best appliance function. My blender never blends as much as I want to blend it. The key here is to remember that if you expend energy into useless dead things, then you're not going to produce a living, viable, self-reliant life. Now, I'm going to come back to the author, Judith Walker Riggs, because she's talking about a need to have a universal theology. She said that systems used to work way back in the time when things were black and white. You had heaven, earth, and hell. A very Western concept, I'll agree with that right off the bat. It's a perfect structure. The idea of the cosmos, that we were perfect spheres within spheres within spheres, right? And then Copernicus came along and wrecked all of that. And the wrecking has continued. And as we begin to better understand that we are not the center of the universe, the solar system, our planet, that Rome is not the center of the world, right? As all these things begin to expand outward, our concept of God and the divine is expanded as well. She suggests that we should expand our concept of the divine from just the world. We're all connected. My breath is the plant's breath, and we are connected. To the universe. We are all connected with the universe, and we're connected through the universe through the knowledge that we continue to attain. As our understanding of physics and celestial bodies and biology and chemistry continue to grow, as our understanding of the microprocesses of atoms and organisms. I found out recently that your mitochondria is separate from your body within your cell, but is inherited through your family. So you have DNA that's directly connected to your parents, but your mitochondria, the little power stations within your cells, are a completely separate entity within your body that is inherited through that process of birth. Crazy. So, as we learn these different things and they push us forward into the world, what we begin to discover is that we cannot know everything. So she says there's 3 things in our universal theology that we can transplant universe for God. The universe is ultimately unknowable. So is God. Ultimately unknowable. You can hope and expect and put different tags on it, but really, the universe, we don't even know for certain whether it's expanding or shrinking, if it's stagnant, if it's going to be here 20 years in the future. We hope. We've done some math. It looks like it's going to be around, but we don't know. The unchanging law is change itself. So, No matter what we discover and think we know today, we can almost guarantee that tomorrow we could learn something different that is going to change us and grow us in a different direction. That doesn't mean that there aren't absolute truths, but absolute truths become very slippery in this process, right? I get really frustrated when we talk about the theory of evolution and people are like, well, it's just a theory. I had a theory that Kool-Aid was moon juice. Well, you can prove your theory wrong, right? So far, it's really difficult to prove the theory of evolution wrong as it's continued to progress through scientific discovery to date, right? People have found portions of it that were in error. They postulated, they studied it, they did experiments, and they came forward and they're like, well, maybe not that, but this is definitely the way this works. We continue to grow. In our universal theology, we acknowledge that growth is going to happen. Change has to happen. We can't stop change. But what we can do is in the moment participate in that change fully as a self-reliant being, right? All kinds of things are changing around us constantly. I can think of a couple that I don't want to talk about right now, but we all know that they're happening. Those changes make it difficult to remember how to be yourself, right? One of the things I found really frustrating after the last presidential election was my Facebook feed became flooded with memes that had critical things to say about people in power that had nothing to do with those people in power's actions. I don't care about your skin color. I don't care about your wife's accent. I don't care about what you choose to eat or when you choose to eat it or where you eat it at. I guess it's funny to make fun of people, and it's easy to make fun of power because it diminishes that power, makes it possible to access change that needs to be dynamic. But if we just get caught up in the bullying aspect of turning our faces towards power, then we undermine our ability to really make change. All we do is continue to propagate the same system that power is propagating itself, right? We justify the actions of bullies when we act like bullies. And it's hard to believe that that's the way it works because, man, you don't want to be a bully and at the same time you'd really like somebody to know that they're not very bright. Might be better to show them statistics that show how their policies and their actions have undermined the integrity of the system. So, I'm not saying anybody here is not helping to undermine the integrity of the system. We're going to figure it out. The third thing is everything is connected. So in our universal religion theology, the universe is ultimately unknowable. Who's surprised by that? The unchanging law is change itself. It sounds pedantic, but it's true. Everything is connected. And how is it all connected? You can look at all kinds of different systems, the way that our bodies work, our atoms work, our cells work, the way that the universe works, the planets work, the way that social systems construct, deconstruct, and reconstruct. I had a question on a class recently in which they asked about my thoughts on the history of Christianity and how it affected my belief. And I was like, well, there was or wasn't originally an individual who did or did not turn over a system of Roman slave mentality by saying that people as individuals had worth and value. And then that person died and may or may not have been reborn. But all the paperwork says that he was. But if you look at the paperwork, most of it was written well after the guy died by people who had never met him, who were just interpreting the verbal stories from others that came before him. And as that moved forward, that system that was once a grassroots system built up into a powered down system. And as that powered down system began to warp that message of individuals having value, those individuals were then put into like a press corps to uplift that religion through labor and through wars and through suffering. Then it split off and it became two separate things. And those two separate things said that they both had the truth. And one truth was that the divine law comes through the Pope, and the other truth is the divine law comes through the Bible that is written. Of all these scraps and bits of paper that were compiled together after this guy died, that we're not really certain if it's the actual word of God because it's, telephone. And then we move forward, and those people persecute their own people and persecute other people because they're really worried that if you don't read the Bible right, you're not going to get it and everybody's going to go to hell. And we can't have that, even though hell isn't actually in the papers. And then we continue forward, and we find that we need to have a better educated populace so we can really understand what the papers are talking about. And as we get a better educated populace, the populace is like, I read these papers, these are crazy. It's got some good parts, but some of it's just off the wall, right? And then the populace continued to read and continued to get better educated. And then the authority of the religion came down and said, you know what, it's probably best if you're not that smart. You'll understand the papers better if you read less. And then we fabricate off. And we look at the way that these religions come into systems and undermine the integrity of the original people that are there as we cross oceans and we cross worlds, and see how those people are tormented and enslaved by those religions. And then we see how those religions are then turned into a form of revolution by the people they enslaved. And those religions then rise up and give us an opportunity to craft to our history and not hold on to the pain and the devastation that that religion created, but gives us an opportunity to look at progressive ways to move forward in the future so we can once again recognize individual people as human beings. In the end, I'm an atheist. My teacher said it sounds like listening to somebody do one of those drunk history moments. I was sober, but it's how I feel. I like to evaluate the world around me on an individual basis. I like to participate in the world and then make what I like to think of as learned, cause-effect reactions to the world. I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm privileged as any other person is privileged. Just in this room alone, the fact that we were born in the United States, the accident of birth has given us privilege. The accident of birth is something that I've been thinking about in this interconnectedness and interdependence. Because I got to tell you, I really like to be an independent artist, right? I like to go out and create things. I don't want to be told how to do it. I'll go find my own paints. I'll dig up my own platform to do it. But I'm not making my own paints. I'm not growing a variety of different flowers in my backyard that I'm crushing with a variety of oils that I've cultivated for my own livestock so that I can match them together to make great vibrant yellows, or off mining cobalt in Africa so I can get just the right blue. If that's what it took to be a painter, I would sculpt mud. It's just not the way I want to go. I am dependent on others, and I am dependent on their integrity in their process, right? If I go and buy a paint product, I expect that paint product to do what the paint product says it's going to do. Some of you guys might have had experience with, say, temper paint, right? And there's a difference between temper paint and acrylic paint. And if you went and bought acrylic paint and it worked like temper paint, everyone would be really disappointed. You'd be disappointed, your client would be disappointed. The painting itself would weep. Literally, because temper paint sucks. It just dripped when it got humid. It's bad. So, we are dependent on the integrity of others. In that integrity, it's necessary to maintain our self-reliance, though. I know it's convoluted, but if you don't maintain your self-reliance, then you can't make evaluative statements. You can't look at something and go, okay, everybody said this painting's fantastic, but I don't get it. I'm not going to pay $3 million for this fantastic painting. I don't get it. You don't have to. You can evaluate and have a process yourself. Now, just because it's the Mona Lisa and you don't have artistic taste, does it matter? I had a really good experience when I worked in a wine and liquor store once. The wine and liquor store I worked in, all of the guys who sold wine traveled to different wine regions all over the world. And so if you went to buy Spanish wine there, the guy was at Spanish vineyards buying the wine. And if you went to buy Italian wine, he was at Italian vineyards and French vineyards, etc. And so it was all very high class, very wealthy wine. Well, when you pop open a bottle of wine and give it a taste to whoever wants to try it, you cork the bottle and you have a 3-day sit before it's gone bad, right? And you can't resell it, it's been opened. But that one sip of that $150 bottle of wine could sell 3 or 4 cases of it, so there wasn't a problem sharing the wine. And we're all tasting the wine after it's been opened, and it's a really expensive bottle. And they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, I think it tastes like the $10 bottle we tried yesterday. And the guy was like, yeah, it's really close. And I'm like, so why would I spend $150 for this bottle when I can buy the $10 bottle I got yesterday? And he's like, well, what people don't seem to realize is that your history of taste influences what you like. So there's no reason for you to buy a $150 bottle of wine if you're perfectly happy with the $10 bottle of wine. There's no reason for you to go out and buy the most expensive Afghan sweater if you can knit your own sweater at home and be perfectly happy. The integrity of self-reliance is trusting your mind and senses to give you the informed information that you need to be yourself. And then, in that interconnectedness, allowing other people to use their senses and mind to be informed selves, and acknowledging that informed self, and in that acknowledgement, interacting compassionately. Whew, it was like a math problem, and we did it. I don't like math. All right, the last little bit here Emerson points out 4 places that we fall short when we're trying to be self-reliant. And I'm going to be quick because we're almost done. The 4 places are prayer, travel, intellect/education, and art. We tend to take society's overarching view when it comes to these things. And I know it seems strange that we live in a country in which you can pretty much have any religion you want, but when Emerson was writing, we had a little bit more constraint. And in that constraint, you can see like the way that all of Louisiana's parishes, not counties, right? The idea that certain religions bond together in a township and they have a parish and the whole town is under that same order of thought. Okay? If we're all praying to the same thing and we're not thinking about why we're praying or what we're praying for, then we're praying into a dead system, and it undermines our ability to live in the now. Because we're hoping for something that's not going to happen in our prayer. And we're looking back to prayers of others that aren't our own and using that as a rickety intellectual scaffolding to make our concessions to the divine. And we're not living in the moment and actually living the course of the prayer that we want to have manifest. I thought that was nice. Travel. We spend a lot of time sitting in our homes wishing we were somewhere else because we'd rather escape our home and go someplace else where there's more culture, there's more people, there's more money, there's more love, there's more sunshine. I'm not knocking the sunshine one. That's a really nice reason to go. But what he's pointing out is that there was a rise in intellectuals within the 1800s in which they started to go to Europe, and everything's in Europe. Oh, Paris has got the best paintings, and Italy's got the best operas, and China's got the best porcelain, right? And all these things are keyed into these places. You have to travel the world to really be educated. And then you go and adopt those other people's traditions as part of your intellectual heritage, and you deny yourself the self-reliance on the fact that I grew up in, a log cabin in Missouri. No big deal. There's a lot of great things that come out of log cabins in Missouri. Although I think it was Illinois that got us Abraham Lincoln. Anyway, log cabins aren't so bad. The thing to remember, though, is that we all have our intellectual history, and we're grounded in that. Travel's not a problem to travel at all. It's not an issue. The issue is denying what you have at hand with the hope of getting something better somewhere else. The grass is greener concept is really what he's talking about. Then we have the intellect and education, the dumbing down of education and intellect and saying that it is superior. The idea that we give people the same spoon-fed history, philosophy, that we don't analyze and we don't critically analyze the information that's coming to us. I think this is actually really coming to bear in the United States today when we talk about the way that we teach history. Somebody put on my Facebook post recently, and I'm not positive who it is, but I'm going to look in that direction, that many schools' textbooks don't teach that the Civil War was over slavery. Okay? So what we decide to teach and educate people are going to form the systems that they have to rise up within and rebel against in the future. We have an awful lot of people now who are rebelling against the standard history that we've been given over the years. The idea that Columbus found America. The idea that, the Emancipation Proclamation was like this fantastic, I like Emancipation Proclamation. The Louisiana Purchase was a fantastic move. That Manifest Destiny was the way that the United States should participate in Native American interaction and affairs. All those things were taught to me as like great ideas. The fantastic, wonderful world. There's all this open plains and nobody's living on it except for those hundreds of thousands of Native Americans who've got their own political systems and their own husbands and wives and children's arts and cultures and, homes, really. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We need to evaluate the way that we have education, the way that we look at our intellect, self-reliance. And then the last is art. We adopt from others. Now, I have to say that I have a little bit of a grind with this one because I think that some ways to become a good artist in and of yourself, it's important to study the art of others. Whether that's reading or dance or music or public speaking, all these different ways are ways that we can become part of who we are. The key there is not to become a mimic or a plagiarist of others, right? We don't co-opt their work and say that it's our own. We acknowledge the people who have helped us get where we are so that we can be our own identity, not their identity with our face as a mask. And so that's what I'm asking you to remember as you go in the world this week. Be self-reliant. Don't be the mask for someone else's thoughts and ideas. Participate in the world now. There's perfectly fine reasons to hope for the future and be nostalgic about the past, but now is where we live and function and interact. That is where the interconnectedness happens. So get out there and participate in the interconnectedness as your true self. There we go. All right. And right at noon, ding, we're going to do hymn number 318, We Would Be One. Please stand and sing as you're willing and able.